My name is Madison, I'm 26 years old, and I never thought I'd be the type of person who would cancel an $18,000 European vacation. But when your father calls you a burden during Sunday dinner and kicks you out of the family home, some things change inside you. 7 years later, when they came asking for my exclusive travel discount, I remembered every painful word. If you've ever been undervalued by family, you might understand my decision. Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if family drama resonates with you. Growing up in suburban Boston, my childhood looked picture perfect from the outside. Our colonial-style house, with its neatly trimmed hedges and seasonal wreaths on the door, projected an image of upper-middle-class stability. My father, Richard, worked as a corporate attorney. My mother, Eleanor, taught piano lessons from our sunroom, and my older brother, Jason, excelled at everything from academics to athletics. Then there was me. Despite sharing my family's dark hair and hazel eyes, I always felt like I existed in grayscale while they lived in vibrant color. My father's approval came sporadically, usually when I brought home straight-A report cards or won a piano competition. Mother was gentler, but deferred to him in all matters of importance. Jason, for years my senior, was too busy collecting trophies and acceptance letters to prestigious universities to notice my constant struggle for affirmation. The only person who truly saw me was my grandmother, Rose. She lived with us until I was 16, occupying the guest suite on the first floor. During difficult moments when my father's criticism became too much, I would slip into a room where the scent of lavender and old books created a sanctuary. "You have a different kind of brilliance," she would tell me, her arthritic fingers patting my hand. "Your father sees the world in straight lines. You see it in constellations. Neither is wrong, just different." When she passed away during my senior year of high school, I lost my greatest advocate. The funeral was brief, dignified, and lacking the emotional depth that characterized my relationship with her. My father handled the arrangements with the same efficiency he applied to everything, including his children's futures. My academic record earned me acceptance to Northwestern University, my dream school with an excellent business program. I still remember the day the thick envelope arrived, how my hands trembled as I read the congratulatory letter. "Northwestern is expensive," my father said when I shared the news at dinner. "We've already allocated most of our education fund to Jason's medical school expenses. We can offer partial support, but you'll need to cover the difference." My mother nodded along, eyes downcast. "Perhaps something more affordable would be sensible, dear. Jason at least had the decency to look uncomfortable." "I'm sure you'll figure it out, Maddie. You always do." Determined to prove them wrong, I pieced together scholarships, loans, and worked 20 hours weekly at the campus coffee shop and as a library assistant. Each semester was a financial tightrope walk, but I maintained my GPA while developing an interest in financial advising, particularly travel investments. By junior year, I secured an internship with a prestigious financial firm that specialized in international investments and travel portfolios. My supervisor, Teresa, recognized my talent for detail and customer relations, mentoring me toward a specialization that would eventually become my career. Through those college years, my visits home became increasingly infrequent. Each return featured the same subtle undermining from my father, questioning my choice of major, comparing my internship to Jason's medical residency, suggesting that my achievements were somehow less substantial. "Financial advising is trendy now," he said during one holiday dinner, "but it lacks the stability and respect of medicine or law. I worry about your long-term prospects." I learned to deflect, to change subjects, to minimize my time in his presence. My mother would call weekly, our conversations pleasant but superficial. We discussed the weather, her garden, local news, never my struggles or achievements, never my father's behavior. After graduation, I accepted a position with the firm where I'd interned, focusing on luxury travel financial planning. The irony wasn't lost on me that I helped wealthy clients plan extravagant vacations while carefully budgeting my own expenses to repay student loans. 6 months before the incident that would permanently alter my relationship with my family, I'd been too busy with work projects to visit home. when Mother called suggesting I come for a weekend. Her voice carried an unusual note of insistence. Perhaps sensing my hesitation, she added, "Your father has been under stress with his partner's retirement negotiations. It would be nice for him to have family around." Against my better judgment, I agreed to return home for the weekend, packing a small overnight bag and steeling myself for the inevitable scrutiny. I couldn't have known that this visit would be the breaking point of 2 decades of accumulated tension. The drive to my parents' house that Friday evening felt like traveling backward in time. Each familiar landmark, the stone church with its impressive spire, the small Italian bakery where we bought Sunday morning pastries, the park where I had my first kiss, evoked memories both comforting and constricting. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Mother had planted new hydrangeas along the walkway, their blue blooms nodding in the gentle spring breeze. "Madison." Right on time, Mother greeted me at the door, her slender frame wrapped in a floral apron. She smelled of rosemary and lemon as she embraced me briefly. "Your father's in his study. Jason and Amber will join us for dinner at 7. I hadn't known my brother and his fiancée would be there, which immediately raised my guard. Family dinners with the complete cast usually meant an announcement or some form of orchestrated conversation. After freshening up in my old bedroom, now transformed into a generic guest room with barely a trace of my existence, I reluctantly made my way to my father's study. The heavy oak door stood partially open, and I could see him hunched over financial documents, reading glasses perched on his nose. "Dad?" "I'm here," I said, knocking gently on the doorframe. He looked up, his expression neutral. "Madison. Good drive." Before I could answer, he continued, "Your brother has excellent news about his fellowship. Make sure to congratulate him at dinner." "I will," I promised, already feeling the familiar diminishment settling over me. Dinner began pleasantly enough. Mother had prepared her signature roast beef with Yorkshire pudding. Jason and Amber arrived bearing an expensive bottle of wine, and conversation flowed around hospital politics and wedding preparations. I offered appropriate responses, asked polite questions, and waited for the real purpose of this gathering to emerge. As Mother served her apple crumble, I decided to volunteer some positive news of my own. "I received a promotion last week," I said during a lull in conversation. "The firm has made me lead financial advisor for their new luxury travel division." Jason smiled genuinely. "That's fantastic, Maddie. Congratulations." Mother nodded. "How nice, dear. More crumble." My father set down his fork with deliberate precision. "Lead advisor at your age seems premature. I hope they're not advancing you too quickly before you've developed proper judgment." The familiar sting of his dismissal burned, but years of therapy had strengthened my resolve. "Actually, I've consistently exceeded performance metrics and brought in several major accounts. My judgment has proven quite sound." "Major accounts," he repeated with a slight scoff. "Your brother is making decisions that save lives daily. That's responsibility with real consequences." Jason shifted uncomfortably. "Dad, that's not really." "I'm merely pointing out the difference in magnitude," my father interrupted. "Medicine and law build society's foundation. Financial advising is supplementary." Something snapped inside me. Years of accommodating his belittlement crystallized into unexpected clarity. "My career helps people secure their futures and realize their dreams," I said evenly. "Just because I'm not following your approved path doesn't make my work meaningless." His face darkened. "This attitude is precisely what I'm referring to. You've always been defensive about your choices rather than considering that your parents might have wisdom to offer. Wisdom is different from control, Dad. I've built my career without your approval or financial support." Mother interjected nervously, "Madison, your father has always wanted what's best." "What's best for whom?" I asked, surprising myself with my directness. "Because it's never seemed to be what's best for me." My father pushed back from the table, his napkin falling to the floor. "After everything we've sacrificed for you, this is your response? Do you have any idea the financial and emotional burden you've been on this family?" The word burden hung in the air like a thunderclap. My brother's expression shifted from discomfort to shock. Amber stared fixedly at her dessert. Mother's hands trembled slightly as she clutched her water glass. Burden? I repeated, my voice barely audible. Is that how you see me? Your daughter. Don't twist my words, he snapped. But yes, your constant resistance to guidance, your expensive education that we helped with despite your impractical major choice. Your perpetual need to chart your own course regardless of our experience. It's been exhausting. Memories flashed through my mind. Working double shifts to afford textbooks while Jason received the newest medical equipment without question. Celebrating achievements alone in my dorm room because sharing them at home inevitably led to comparisons. Graduating with honors while my parents attended but remained reserved in their congratulations. I paid for most of my education myself, I said, standing slowly. I worked throughout college while maintaining a 3.9 GPA. I've never asked you for money since graduation, never relied on your connections for job opportunities, never burdened you with my problems. So please enlighten me about these sacrifices you've made on my behalf. If you can't show proper respect in this house, my father said, his voice dangerously quiet. Perhaps you shouldn't be in it. Mother gasped softly. Richard, surely you don't mean. I do, he said, not taking his eyes off me. Madison is 26 years old. If she believes she knows better than her parents, she can exercise that independence elsewhere until she's ready to approach this family with appropriate gratitude. The silence that followed was absolute. Jason started to speak, but stopped when my father raised his hand slightly. With trembling hands, but steady voice. I placed my napkin beside my half-eaten dessert. Thank you for dinner, Mom. I think it's best if I leave now. I walked upstairs to collect my overnight bag, methodically gathering the few toiletries I'd unpacked. Through the bedroom window, I could see rain had begun to fall, droplets racing down the glass like tears I refused to shed in that house. When I came downstairs, only my mother stood in the foyer, wringing her hands. He doesn't mean it, not really, she whispered. Stay until morning at least. The weather's turning nasty. I kissed her cheek gently. He meant every word, Mom. And I think I've finally heard him clearly. The rain soaked through my light jacket as I walked to my car. Only when I was 3 blocks away, pulled over at the small park where I once played as a child, did I allow myself to break down. Sobs racked my body as 19 years of conditional love and measured approval culminated in one devastating word, burden. As streetlights reflected off the rain-slicked dashboard, I made a promise to myself. I would never return to a place where my worth was so fundamentally misunderstood. I was done trying to earn love that should have been freely given. That rainy night marked the beginning of my true independence, though the path forward wasn't immediately clear. I drove straight to my friend Brianna's apartment, mascara streaked and shivering. Holy crap, Madison, she said, ushering me inside her cozy one-bedroom. What happened? Between broken sobs, I recounted the dinner disaster. Brianna, who had witnessed my family dynamics firsthand during college visits, nodded grimly. You can stay here as long as you need, she offered, pulling out her sofa bed. Seriously. However long. Just until I figure things out, I promised, though neither of us knew what that meant exactly. The next morning, reality set in. I had an apartment lease in Chicago starting in 3 weeks after graduation, minimal savings after covering education costs, and final exams looming. My carefully constructed post-graduation plans suddenly seemed precarious. First things first, Brianna said over coffee. You need to secure your documents and valuables from your parents' house. She accompanied me the following day when we knew my father would be at work. Mother answered the door with reddened eyes, but said little as I collected my birth certificate, passport, childhood photographs, and grandmother's silver locket, the only inheritance she'd specifically left to me. Your father will come around, she whispered as I was leaving. He just needs time. I didn't have the heart to tell her I wasn't sure I wanted him to come around. Some words can't be unsaid, some wounds cut too deep for simple healing. Financial reality demanded immediate attention. I picked up extra shifts at the campus coffee shop and added weekend work at a local bookstore. Sleep became a luxury as I balanced these jobs with final exams and thesis completion. My roommate situation for the Chicago apartment fell through when I couldn't contribute to the security deposit on schedule, forcing me to find more affordable housing further from my new workplace. On graduation day, I stood among thousands of my peers in cap and gown, scanning the audience not for my family, but for the chosen support system that had emerged: Brianna, my mentor Teresa, my study group partners Aiden and Kimberly, and my elderly neighbor Mrs. Patel, who had fed me homemade curry on nights I returned exhausted from triple shifts. They cheered louder than anyone when I crossed the stage, Brianna's distinctive whistle cutting through the formal atmosphere. Later, they pooled resources to treat me to a graduation dinner at a modest Italian restaurant, where Teresa surprised me with a professional leather portfolio embossed with my initials. "For the financial wizard you're becoming," she said warmly. "Your instincts are exceptional, Madison. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." The Chicago apartment I eventually secured was a third-floor walk-up with questionable plumbing and noisy neighbors, but it was mine. I assembled discount furniture, hung fairy lights to disguise water stains on the ceiling, and slowly created a space that reflected my personality without judgment or comparison. My entry-level position at Landmark Financial wasn't glamorous. I handled routine consultations, prepared reports for senior advisors, and stayed late studying investment trends. My specialty in travel finance developed gradually as I demonstrated particular skill in navigating international regulations and currency fluctuations. 6 months into my professional life, I received a text from Jason. Our communication had been sporadic, mostly birthday acknowledgments and major holiday wishes. Dad asking if you're coming for Thanksgiving. Mom making your favorite pumpkin cheesecake. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Please thank Mom, but I have plans." No further explanation, no opening for negotiation. My actual Thanksgiving was spent with Brianna's boisterous family in Michigan, where her mother insisted I take leftovers despite my polite protests. "You're too thin, sweetie. Finance must not feed their people." Christmas passed similarly, with an invitation extended and politely declined. I sent modest gifts to my parents and Jason, safe. Impersonal items ordered online and shipped directly. They reciprocated with a check that I couldn't afford to return but couldn't bring myself to cash. The second year brought professional growth and a small but significant raise. I moved to a better apartment, began building an emergency fund, and finally felt secure enough to address my emotional health. Finding an affordable therapist took persistence, but eventually I connected with Dr. Bennett, whose practical approach helped me untangle years of conditional affection and impossible standards. "You're describing classic emotional neglect with comparative criticism," she explained during one session. "Your achievements were consistently measured against your brother's different path rather than valued in their own right." "But they provided for me," I countered, still struggling with guilt. "We weren't poor. I had opportunities." "Material provision without emotional support is like serving food without nutrients," Dr. Bennett said. "It fills the space, but doesn't nourish growth." Through weekly sessions, I began recognizing patterns in my relationships, particularly my tendency to overwork to prove my worth and difficulty accepting praise without deflection. Slowly, I developed boundaries and expectations for how I deserved to be treated. By my third year in Chicago, I had established myself as Landmark Financial's go-to advisor for luxury travel planning. My client portfolio included executives, early retirees, and occasional celebrities seeking discreet financial management for their international lifestyles. I developed a reputation for thorough research, personalized attention, and exclusive travel opportunities through industry connections. My personal apartment now featured proper furniture, artwork I genuinely loved, and a small balcony where I nurtured container plants. My friendship circle expanded to include colleagues, neighbors, and fellow survivors from a support group for adult children of emotionally unavailable parents. The contrast between my current life and family dinners of tense silence couldn't have been starker. Weekend brunches with friends involved genuine laughter, celebrations of each other's successes without qualification, and the freedom to express opinions without fear of judgment. "You seem lighter," Brianna observed during one of her visits. "Less like you're bracing for impact all the time." She was right. The constant anticipation of criticism had eased, replaced by growing confidence in my decisions and abilities. I maintained minimal contact with my parents, occasional texts, brief calls on birthdays, while establishing firm boundaries around visits and expectations. When my firm announced an exclusive partnership with Celestial Journeys, a luxury travel company offering substantial employee discounts, I added another achievement to my growing professional reputation. The partnership, which I had helped negotiate, positioned me for promotion to senior advisor status 3 years ahead of the typical timeline. I was finally standing firmly on my own ground when my mother's unexpected call disrupted the peace I'd carefully constructed. Her name on my phone screen after months of minimal contact immediately triggered the old anxiety, a Pavlovian response to years of strained interaction. I almost let it go to voicemail, but answered on the final ring. I couldn't have known that this conversation would reignite old wounds and test the boundaries I'd worked so hard to establish. "Madison? Are you there?" My mother's voice carried through the phone with that familiar note of uncertainty. "Hi, Mom," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral as I settled into my office chair. Outside my window, Chicago's financial district glittered in the morning sun, a reassuring reminder of the life I'd built. "Is everything okay?" "Oh yes, everything's fine," she rushed to assure me. "Wonderful, actually. That's why I'm calling." The tension in my shoulders eased slightly. "Not an emergency then." "Your father and I are planning a trip," she continued, her voice brightening. "To Europe. Can you believe it? After all these years of talking about it, we're finally going to see Italy, France, and Greece." "That sounds lovely," I said, genuinely pleased for her. My mother had always kept a travel scrapbook filled with magazine clippings of Mediterranean coastlines and Parisian cafes. "When are you going?" "September. 3 weeks touring everything we've dreamed of seeing." Her excitement was palpable. Richard is finally taking time away from the firm. 30 years, and he's barely used his vacation days. I smiled despite myself. This was the most animated I'd heard my mother in years. "I'm happy for you both. You deserve it." A brief pause followed, and I sensed the real purpose of the call approaching. "Madison, Jason mentioned something interesting about your work," she began cautiously. "He said your company has a partnership with luxury travel agencies? Some kind of exclusive discount program." My stomach tightened. Of course. This wasn't just a happy announcement, it was a request. "Yes, landmark partners with Celestial Journeys," I confirmed. "It's a premium benefit for our employees and clients." "Well," she continued, her voice taking on that slightly breathless quality it always had when discussing money matters, "we've been looking at packages, and the one we love is quite expensive. Nearly $40,000 for both of us." I remained silent, already anticipating where this was heading. "Jason thought perhaps, with your company connection, you might be able to help us access a better rate? He mentioned you might get substantial discounts, perhaps up to 40 or even 50% off." The irony wasn't lost on me. After years of dismissing my career as less valuable than medicine or law, my father was now interested in the benefits it could provide him. "I could look into it," I said carefully. "The partnership program does offer significant savings, but there are guidelines about how they can be used." "Oh, that would be wonderful," Mother exclaimed. "Your father was just saying last night how proud he is of your position at that financial company. This trip means so much to us, especially with his retirement coming next year." The mention of my father's supposed pride sent a familiar ache through my chest. In 3 years, he hadn't once contacted me directly to express such sentiments. "Send me the details of the package you're interested in," I said. "I'll see what's possible." After ending the call, I sat motionless, staring at the family photo still displayed on my desk, taken on my 16th birthday, before the fractures became chasms. My therapist had suggested keeping it as a reminder that my history was real, not imagined, and that my feelings were valid responses to actual experiences. During our session that evening, I presented Dr. Bennett with my dilemma. They want to use my discount for a luxury vacation, but haven't apologized for calling me a burden and kicking me out, I summarized. Part of me wants to help because it would mean so much to my mother. Another part feels like I'm being used. What would it mean to you to provide this discount? She asked, her expression thoughtful. I considered this. Maybe it could be an olive branch? A way to rebuild some kind of relationship without rehashing old arguments? Or perhaps it's an opportunity to establish that you give on your terms, not from obligation or fear, she suggested. The dynamic has always been them setting conditions for their approval. This reverses that pattern. I nodded slowly. I could help because I choose to, not because I owe them or need their validation. Exactly. Boundaries aren't about cutting people off, they're about defining how you'll engage in healthier ways. With this perspective, I decided to arrange the travel discount. The process involved several meetings with our Celestial Journeys liaison, completion of employee benefit forms, and submission of my parents' preferred itinerary. The discount would reduce their cost from approximately $40,000 to $22,000, a substantial $18,000 savings. I emailed my mother the modified booking details with a brief message. Happy to help with this. The discount has been applied. You'll need to finalize the booking with payment by July 15th to secure these rates. Her response came within minutes. Madison, this is incredibly generous. Richard is thrilled with the savings. We're making a few changes to the itinerary. Could you accommodate a hotel upgrade in Santorini and an additional excursion in Tuscany? Also, is first-class air travel included? The assumptions an immediate push for more stirred uneasiness. Nevertheless, I worked with our travel partners to incorporate their requested changes while maintaining the discount structure. A week later, my phone lit up with a text from my cousin Rachel. So excited you're helping with Uncle Richard's retirement celebration trip. He says you owed him one after all the support through college. Can't wait to see pics from their adventures. I stared at the message, heat rising in my cheeks. Owed him? Support through college? The narrative being shared with extended family was starkly different from reality. Before I could process this, another text arrived from my mother. Dear. What had begun as a seemingly simple request was expanding into expectations of unlimited access to benefits I had earned through my devalued career. More troubling was the revelation that this wasn't the medical necessity my mother had initially implied, but a retirement celebration, and one where my father was apparently taking credit for support. ING me while simultaneously portraying me as indebted to him. I closed my eyes, practicing the breathing techniques Dr. Bennett had taught me. This wasn't about the money or even the discount itself. It was about the continuing pattern of manipulation and dismissal wrapped in the thinnest veneer of family connection. A decision crystallized in my mind. I would attend one final family dinner to discuss the trip details. Face to face. I would assess whether there was any genuine desire for reconciliation or merely the expectation of services rendered. Whatever happened at that dinner would determine my next steps, both regarding the trip and my future relationship with my family. The upscale steakhouse my father selected for our dinner meeting spoke volumes about the occasion's importance to him. Located in downtown Boston with views of the harbor, Morton's represented the type of establishment he reserved for client meetings and significant celebrations. I arrived early, choosing a seat that allowed me to watch them enter. My mother spotted me first, waving with nervous energy as they approached. She wore a new dress, her hair freshly styled, clear signals of the evening's significance to her as well. My father followed with his characteristic confident stride, nodding acknowledgement to the maitre d', who recognized him as a regular. Madison, he said, offering a brief, formal hug that barely made contact. You look well. Chicago agrees with you. Thank you, I replied, accepting my mother's warmer embrace. It's good to see you both. The initial conversation flowed with surprising ease. We discussed neutral topics, Chicago's architecture, Boston's recent weather, a new exhibit at the art museum Mother wanted to visit. Our appetizers arrived, and Father ordered an expensive bottle of wine with a flourish. To family reunions, he toasted, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. And to Madison's valuable travel connections. There it was, the first reference to the actual purpose of our gathering. I sipped my wine without responding to the toast. "We can't thank you enough for the discount," Mother gushed, filling the awkward silence. "The itinerary looks absolutely magical. I've already started shopping for appropriate clothes." "I'm glad it worked out," I said carefully. "The partnership program is one of our firm's most valuable assets." My father nodded. "Networking benefits can certainly compensate for other limitations in the financial sector. Smart of you to leverage that advantage." The backhanded compliment was so characteristic that I almost smiled. Some things never changed. "Actually, our travel finance division is the fastest growing segment of the firm," I replied evenly. "We've expanded our client base by 30% this year alone." He murmured noncommittally. Speaking of the trip details, we had a few questions about the cancellation policy. If we needed to adjust dates or add destinations, how flexible would that be? I explained the policies while our main courses arrived, detailing the terms and conditions I had already included in the booking documents. As the meal progressed, it became increasingly clear that they viewed me primarily as their travel agent rather than their daughter reuniting after prolonged separation. "Your mother mentioned you might be able to include Jason and Amber for the Italy portion," my father asked, cutting precisely into his filet mignon. "I've looked into it," I said. "Adding them would be possible, but would require additional paperwork and approvals since the discount is specifically for immediate family of employees." He waved his hand dismissively. "But you can make it happen. After all, Jason is immediate family." "There are company policies involved," I explained. "I'm willing to start the process, but I can't guarantee approval." "Surely you have some influence by now," he pressed. "Someone at your level should be able to navigate simple administrative hurdles." The familiar diminishment resurfaced. Before I could respond, Mother interjected with what she clearly thought was helpful context. "Madison, this trip is so important to your father. After 30 years at the firm, he deserves a proper retirement celebration." I set down my fork. "Retirement celebration? I thought this was about seeing Europe before Dad's knee surgery next year." They exchanged glances. "Well, it's both really," Mother hedged. "The timing works out perfectly." "So the medical urgency you mentioned when you first called about the discount wasn't entirely accurate," I clarified. Father's expression hardened. "The specific reason hardly matters. Family helps family. I would think after everything we've done for you, arranging a simple travel discount wouldn't require justification." "Everything you've done for me," I repeated slowly. "Like what, specifically?" "Madison," Mother warned softly. "No. I'm curious," I continued. "Because Rachel texted me about how I owed you for supporting me through college. I'd love to know what version of history you've been sharing with the extended family." My father's jaw tightened. "I don't appreciate your tone. Your success in Chicago has clearly gone to your head if you've forgotten who provided your foundation." "My foundation," I echoed. "You mean the partial tuition contribution that came with constant criticism? Or perhaps the emotional support that was consistently withheld unless I followed your approved path?" "This is exactly the attitude problem you've always had," he snapped. "Your brother never questions our guidance or demands emotional coddling." "Jason received full financial support through medical school plus living expenses," I countered. "I worked 20 hours weekly while maintaining honors standing just to afford basic necessities. The situations aren't comparable." "Your career choice was impractical," he insisted. "We allocated resources where they would provide maximum return." "Richard," my mother murmured, looking uncomfortable. "And now your impractical career is suddenly valuable because it provides you with travel discounts," I observed. "Interesting how that works." His face flushed. "I see Chicago hasn't improved your respect issues. You've always been quick to perceive slights where none exist." Something in me snapped then, the last thread of hope that this dinner might somehow bridge the chasm between us. "Let's be honest," I said, my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside. "You called me a burden and kicked me out of your house. For 3 years. You've made minimal effort to understand my life or acknowledge my achievements. Now you want an $18,000 travel discount and expect me to provide it with grateful subservience." "That's a gross mischaracterization," he retorted. One heated argument doesn't erase 2 decades of parenting. No, but it revealed the truth underlying those decades, I replied. I was never good enough, never the right kind of successful, never meeting the impossible standard you set. If believing that narrative makes you feel better about your choices, fine, he said coldly. But in this family, we respect parental authority and recognize familial obligations. Mother reached for my hand across the table. Madison, please. We're trying to reconnect here. Are we? I asked gently, meeting her eyes. Or are you trying to access my professional benefits while continuing the same patterns of conditional approval? My father pushed his plate away. I won't sit here and be lectured by my own daughter about parenting. Either you respect this family structure, or you place yourself outside it. The choice has always been yours. The ultimatum hung between us, so similar to the one delivered 3 years earlier at that fateful dinner. Only this time, I wasn't as shocked. Hurt 19-year-old caught off guard by cruelty disguised as tough love. I placed my napkin beside my plate and stood up calmly. You're right about one thing, Dad. The choice is mine. And I choose not to participate in relationships where love and respect only flow in one direction. I withdrew my credit card and handed it to our hovering waiter. Please charge the full bill to this card. Madison, my mother protested, your father will get the check. He always does. Not tonight, I said firmly. I can pay my own way. I've been doing it for years. I gathered my purse and jacket. I'll be reviewing the travel arrangements we've discussed. You'll hear from me by the end of the week regarding the final details. Without waiting for their response, I walked out of the restaurant into the cool evening air. Unlike the rainy night 3 years before, I didn't break down in my car. Instead, I felt an odd sense of clarity and resolution as I drove to my hotel. For the first time, I had faced my father's manipulation without absorbing the blame or questioning my worth. The choice before me was clearer than ever, though implementing it would require careful consideration of both practical and ethical implications. Back in my hotel room, I kicked off my heels and sat cross-legged on the bed, laptop open before me. The Celestial Journeys booking portal displayed my parents' itinerary in colorful detail, luxury accommodations overlooking the Mediterranean, private tours of ancient ruins, exclusive wine tastings in French vineyards, and first-class transportation throughout. My finger hovered over the Modify Booking button as conflicting emotions battled within me. The professional part of me recognized that canceling their trip would have consequences. The personal part questioned whether I owed them consideration after years of emotional neglect culminating in tonight's dinner. I closed the laptop without making changes. This decision required more thought than emotional reaction. The next morning, I called Brianna, who had been my sounding board through the entire reconciliation attempt. They haven't changed at all, I summarized after recounting the previous night's dinner. If anything, they feel more entitled to my professional benefits than ever. Are you considering canceling their trip? She asked directly. I'm considering it, I admitted. But I need to be sure I'm not acting from wounded pride or petty revenge. You've spent 3 years in therapy developing healthy boundaries, Brianna reminded me. Trust your judgment. What feels right to you? That afternoon, I met with my college friend Derek, now a corporate ethics consultant, for lunch in Boston before my flight back to Chicago. Professionally speaking, would canceling their discount be ethical? I asked after explaining the situation. Derek considered this carefully. The company policy allows you to extend benefits to immediate family at your discretion. There's no obligation to maintain those benefits if the relationship doesn't qualify in your assessment. The question is whether you're prepared for potential fallout. Back in Chicago, I scheduled an emergency session with Dr. Bennett. I keep returning to his words from 3 years ago, that I was a burden, I explained. And now he expects access to benefits from the career he consistently devalued. What outcome would respect your boundaries while allowing you to maintain your personal integrity? She asked. That's what I'm struggling with, I admitted. Providing the discount feels like enabling their behavior and returning to old patterns. Canceling it might be interpreted as petty retaliation. There's a difference between retaliation and consequences, Dr. Bennett noted. One seeks to hurt, the other allows natural results of behavior to unfold. Over the next 2 days, I researched Celestial Journey's policies thoroughly, consulted with our legal department about employee benefit guidelines, and reviewed every aspect of the booking I had arranged. I discovered several important facts. 1. The discount was officially registered under my employee ID and could be revoked at my discretion prior to final payment. 2. My parents had not yet submitted payment for the trip. 3. Alternative booking options existed that would allow them to take a similar, though less luxurious, vacation at the same price point without my discount. After careful consideration, I made my decision. This wasn't about punishment, but about establishing final boundaries with people who had demonstrated they would continue old patterns of behavior regardless of my growth or achievements. I logged into the Celestial Journeys portal and initiated the formal cancellation of my employee discount application. The system required a reason. I selected Relationship Status Change with Beneficiary. The $18,000 discount disappeared from the booking, returning it to full retail price. Next, I composed a detailed email to my parents. After careful consideration, I have decided to cancel the employee discount for your European vacation. This decision wasn't made lightly. But after our dinner conversation, it's clear that our relationship remains conditional and inequitable. The booking itself remains active until July 15th. You have several options. 1. Pay the full price of $40,000. 2. Modify the itinerary to a package within your original budget. 3. Cancel entirely with no penalty before the deadline. I've attached information about alternative packages that provide similar experiences at lower price points. This isn't about the money. It's about recognizing that healthy relationships involve mutual respect and acknowledgement of past harm. Neither was present during our dinner conversation. I wish you both well and hope you find a travel solution that works for your retirement celebration. Madison. Before sending this email, I arranged for an automatic reply message to be activated on my account. I am taking a brief digital detox weekend and will respond to messages upon my return. For urgent matters, please contact. Finally, I temporarily blocked my parents' phone numbers and email addresses to protect my mental health during the initial reaction period. This wasn't avoidance but strategic self-care, giving myself space to process without immediate defensive responses. I booked a weekend at a lakeside cabin 3 hours from Chicago, packed my hiking boots and a stack of novels, and prepared to be unavailable during the time my parents would receive notification of the canceled discount. As I drove toward the peaceful retreat, watching Chicago's skyline recede in my rearview mirror, I felt neither vindictive satisfaction nor guilty remorse, only the calm certainty that I had finally established a boundary that honored my worth and dignity. The cabin's rustic charm and surrounding pine forests provided the perfect environment for reflection. Hiking trails along the lakeshore offered physical outlet for emotional processing, while evenings spent by the fireplace allowed me to journal my thoughts and feelings about this definitive step in my family journey. By Sunday evening, as I packed to return to Chicago and reality, I felt centered and prepared for whatever response awaited me. This wasn't the angry reaction of a hurt child, but the considered decision of an adult who understood her value wasn't determined by others' assessment. Monday morning arrived with the inevitability of sunrise. Back in my apartment, I removed the temporary blocks from my devices and watched as notifications flooded in, 17 missed calls, 23 text messages, and 11 emails, the digital manifestation of my family's reaction. I brewed coffee, settled into my favorite reading chair, and began methodically reviewing the communications in chronological order. The initial responses followed predictable patterns: shock and disbelief from my mother, cold fury from my father, awkward attempts at mediation from Jason. As hours passed without my response, the tone shifted. Mother's messages became pleading, father's threatening, Jason's more personal. Most revealing was my father's first email, sent within an hour of receiving my notification. Your unprofessional behavior will be reported to your supervisors. No reputable financial institution would tolerate an employee weaponizing corporate benefits for personal vendettas. Expect professional consequences for this childish tantrum. He clearly still didn't understand, or refused to acknowledge, that my position at Landmark gave me full discretion over benefit allocation. There would be no professional consequences because I had followed all protocols and policies. More surprising was a message from Jason sent late Saturday night. "Maddie, I understand why you did this. I should have spoken up years ago about how differently we were treated. I'm sorry for my silence. Dad is furious, but maybe this needed to happen. Can we talk when things cool down? Jay." This unexpected alliance was the first crack in the family dynamic that had positioned us as competitors rather than siblings. I texted him a simple reply. "I'd like that. Let me know when." My mother's final message before my weekend ended was the most difficult to read. "Madison, please reconsider. This trip meant everything to your father. He may never forgive this betrayal. Whatever issues exist between you, punishing us financially isn't the answer. Family should rise above differences." The subtle guilt manipulation was so familiar it almost made me smile. Rising above differences had always meant me accepting mistreatment without complaint. Not anymore. I composed a single response addressed to both parents. "I understand you're disappointed and angry. My decision stands not as punishment, but as a boundary. I cannot maintain the pretense that our relationship is healthy enough to warrant special benefits when the underlying issues remain unaddressed. I hope you'll find a vacation option that suits your budget and celebration needs." After sending this message, I muted further notifications from them and returned to my normal routine: client meetings, fitness classes, dinner with friends. Life continued without the constant background anxiety of managing family expectations. 3 weeks passed before Jason called. Our conversation began awkwardly, but gradually evolved into the most honest exchange we'd ever shared. "Dad's perspective is complicated," he explained. "He genuinely believes he did everything right by both of us. In his mind, the different treatment was justified by our different choices." "And what do you think?" I asked. A long pause followed. "I think I benefited from a double standard without questioning it. Med school was fully funded while you worked coffee shop shifts between classes. My achievements were celebrated while yours were measured against impossible standards. I didn't see it clearly then, but watching how they responded to your boundary setting, it's opened my eyes." "Better late than never," I said, surprising myself with the lack of bitterness in my voice. "They're still going to Europe," he added. "Scaled back version, no first-class flights. Dad refuses to discuss you at all. Mom tries occasionally, but gets shut down. Are they happy with their revised plans?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Mom seems fine with it. Dad's pride is wounded more than anything else." Jason hesitated. "For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. It wasn't about the money, it was about respect." Those words, coming from the family member who had most benefited from the unequal dynamic, validated my decision in ways therapy and friend support couldn't quite achieve. In my next session with Dr. Bennett, I shared this breakthrough. "Jason's acknowledgement matters to you," she observed. "It confirms I wasn't imagining or exaggerating the different standards." I explained. "Having someone from inside the family system validate my experience, it feels like permission to trust my own perceptions." "That's significant progress," she agreed. "How are you feeling about the trip cancellation now?" I considered this carefully. I don't regret it. It wasn't impulsive or vengeful, it was a necessary boundary after years of attempts at more subtle limits that were consistently ignored. "And your relationship with your parents moving forward?" "Limited contact seems healthiest," I said. "I'm not shutting the door permanently, but any reconnection would require acknowledgement of past patterns and commitment to different behavior." The months that followed brought unexpected developments. My father maintained rigid silence, but my mother began sending brief, neutral messages, articles she thought might interest me. Photos of her garden, simple, thinking of you texts without guilt or demands attached. Jason and I established a new relationship as adults rather than comparative siblings. He visited Chicago with Amber, and the four of us explored the city as equals rather than extensions of our parents' dynamic. My professional life flourished as I advanced to senior advisor status and expanded my client portfolio. My personal life grew richer with deepening friendships, community involvement, and eventually a relationship with Gabriel, a graphic designer who appreciated my boundaries and direct communication style. When September arrived, the month my parents had originally planned for their grand European adventure, I received a postcard from Greece. My mother's familiar handwriting filled the small space. Santorini is as beautiful as I imagined. Smaller trip, but still wonderful. I understand your decision better now. Some conversations with your father still needed. Love always, Mom. The simple acknowledgement brought unexpected tears. Not reconciliation, not yet, but recognition. A first step toward potential healing. During a Sunday call with Jason, I learned more context. They're enjoying the trip they could actually afford, he explained. Dad still mentions the discount situation occasionally, but Mom finally told him she understood why you did it. They had their first honest conversation about family dynamics in probably 30 years. Progress happens in unexpected ways, I mused. Speaking of progress, Jason added, I've been thinking about how I benefited from the favoritism all those years. I want to make something right. He explained that he had started a college fund for our cousin Rachel's daughter, who showed academic promise, but whose family had limited means. I can't undo the past, but I can try to break the pattern for the next generation. As autumn leaves transformed Chicago's landscape, I reflected on my own transformation. The frightened 19-year-old who drove away in tears had become a woman who understood her worth wasn't determined by others' approval. The word burden no longer carried its devastating power. In my final therapy session with Dr. Bennett, not because healing was complete, but because we both agreed I had developed the tools to continue the journey independently, she asked what I had learned from the entire experience. Family isn't just biological connection, I said after careful consideration. It's mutual respect, acknowledgement of each other's unique paths, and love without conditions. Sometimes the family we create through chosen relationships provides the belonging our birth family couldn't offer. And boundaries, she prompted, aren't walls to keep people out, I continued. They're guidelines for how I'll allow myself to be treated. Establishing them isn't selfish, it's necessary for authentic connection. As I walked out of her office that crisp October afternoon, I felt neither triumph nor lingering resentment about the canceled trip. Instead, I experienced the quiet confidence of someone who had learned that standing in her truth wasn't destructive. It was the only foundation upon which genuine relationships could be built. The journey wasn't over. Healing rarely follows a neat, linear path. But I had discovered that my worth wasn't tied to others' ability to recognize it, and that revelation made all the difference. What about you? Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with family? Was there a moment when you realized your worth wasn't determined by others' assessment? Share your experiences in the comments below. If my story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of self-discovery and healing. Remember, sometimes the most powerful act of self-love is simply saying no to what diminishes you. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to honor your own worth today and always.